Take 3. In order to be in compliance with COPA, I'm now asking all children who are watching this video to please turn it off now. This channel is for adult crafters only. Hi everyone, it's Robin. Welcome back to the nest. Like I said, take 3. I am here to answer a viewer's question. She actually had asked several questions. She's a beginner crafter, and so I thought rather than typing it out and trying to explain it to her, that I would do videos answering those questions for her to the best of my knowledge, and thought that it would play right along with one of the goals that I have for 2020 of doing everything that I can to help beginner crafters and tell them what I've learned over the years. So today, as you can see, it's going to be all about inks, and I'm going to tell you the differences between inks and how they're different, but I can only show you comparisons for the inks that I have. I don't have every kind of ink out there. That would be ridiculous. I don't think anyone does. So these are just ones that I have, and some of those are I'm going to have to throw away because I've realized some of them are dried up. But so let's just get started. First off, I'm going to start off with some dye-based inks, and right here are some examples of dye-based inks. These, of course, aren't all of my inks, but I just pulled out a couple of some of the ones that I do own, to where you can get some different brands and such. So you have Lawn Fawn and Stampin' Up. This is just older Stampin' Up, really old. I picked these up for 25 cents at a garage sale, and that was probably 12 years ago. They're still juicy, and I haven't re-inked them, and so I'm not tossing them away if they're still good ink. But this is how I knew that I liked Stampin' Up ink. So when it goes on clearance, I pick up colors. And reality, I probably should just invest each month and get a couple of colors to build up, because I'm finding over the years I've found that I really like this for its clean and simple. You know, it's just it has good coverage, and the lines are very crisp and sharp. So if that's what you like for certain things, then I've found that I really like these. Then we have Distress ink, and I really feel like Distress inks and Distress oxides should kind of be in a category all of its own, but just because of the way that the versatility in Distress inks. I don't just make cards, as you all know. I do a little bit of everything, and I have a larger collection of Distress inks than I do anything, just because they're so versatile and I can use them for all of my crafting projects. However, if you're looking for full coverage with extremely crisp edges and stuff, this wouldn't be something for you. That I don't think that you would enjoy that. I do, however, and this is what I use the most. And then you have Memento. I have this one in Tuxedo Black, and I'll talk more about it in a little bit. But this is a dye-based ink. The Stampabilities, these are ones that you'll find at Hobby Lobby. They're dye-based. And these Color Box are dye-based. So now that I've just shown you a few, this is just a very few dye-based inks that are out there. I'm going to show you some examples of how they stamp. But I want to tell you about some of the things around dye-based inks and some facts about them. They're fast drying. They're vivid in color. They're water-based. They're transparent. And what I mean by that, where I've done this 3 times, my finger is permanently stained. But anyway, what I mean by transparent, you can see through them. So they're that. Let me get a box. They're transparent, and they don't work well, if at all, on black cardstock. And if you try to use it on crafts cardstock, just expect for it to be a more muted color than what you would find it to be on a white cardstock. And some of them, I think I mentioned this in one of my videos before, some of them, like this Lawn Fawn right here, when you stamp it, it's going to be much darker than what it winds up being once it's completely dried. It's kind of like how paint will lighten up when you're painting a wall. It will go on darker, but then will lighten up as it dries. So just kind of have that in mind with the Lawn Fawn. I found that to be the case with that ink. Another thing is, dye-based inks, they absorb into your paper, which is why they dry so fast. They suck it up like putting paint on fresh drywall. You know, they absorb into it. And they have a firm, I'm not going to be able to get that off. They have a firm pad to them. All of the pads are firm. So, let me show you some examples here where I did go ahead and stamp these off. That one, this one, and this one. Put this guy over here because I want to talk about him in a minute. Whoops. Okay, so we'll zoom you in to where you can kind of see here, but then I'm going to bring it up closer for you. So the first one is the Tim Holtz Distress Ink, and this is what I'm talking about. You don't expect crisp, clean edges with that. That is the way that it's supposed to be. I prefer that because I like that vintage, shabby kind of look, and it works for me. So that's why I like that. Lawn Fawn, I was really surprised that that didn't fill in any better than it did. I used a stamp block rather than my stamping platform, so if I had, you know, restamped it again, I'm sure that it would have filled on in. But this is just using a stamp block in one stamp time. This one right here, this is user error. I did not get my stamp dry enough there. I had apparently missed that spot, but that is the Stampin' Up. If you'll see how crisp this is and how well it filled in, and that's on one stamp. This is just with a stamping block, no restamping here. And then this is Stampabilities, and that little guy, poor thing, that is completely user error. I didn't have my stamp dry enough, and so that's why it turned out like that. So I restamped it here, and I was still getting some of those spots, and so, you know, I don't know what the deal is. I know it was really good and dry, but that's the Stampabilities. And then I also stamped the Color Box. However, these are about to dry up. I've had them for years and years and years and years, and they're about to dry up. So, but I still got this really crisp image out of that, even with the ink about dried up. So that was the Color Box, and I used the this is something, if you've never seen on the inside of one of these are really handy, like if you're going to a crop or you're traveling or something. These are really handy because when you open them up, they look like a little flower, and then you'll pull on the inside here. You can see where the names of each one of them are. And this right here was the Fireberry. But you pull these out, and you guys, they're really not that hard to pull out. I'm just having issues with my hands. But you just slide them out like that, and then just slide them back in. And they don't touch each other, so they don't contaminate, you know, the pads and all. But again, they just slide out and then slide right back in. So that is the color box. And I've used these in several different sizes, and they've always worked pretty good, so I kind of like those. So, what else can I tell you about dye-based inks? Well, I can tell you something that I don't do, but you are supposed to do it, is you're supposed to store your dye-based inks upside down, like so. I know this, and I really should do it, and I don't. It's to let your ink come to the surface to where you'll get better images. On the Stampin' Up, they're automatically, the way that they're stored, you store them like this, they're already stored upside down for you. And you flip them open and close them up like that. Which is another wonderful feature of Stampin' Up's ink. Like I said, this is all of the dye-based inks that I have, that I own right now. I have been watching, and I really like the Ranger. I like the results of what I've seen of the Ranger dye-based inks. I have not tried those yet, but that may be something that I would like to try sometime, just to see how I liked it. But if you're wondering, out of the ones that I have here, what are my favorites and the ones that I always go to, it's no secret that I love my Distress inks. I love them just because of what I was saying. I don't remember if it was in this take or take 2, but they're for a multitude of crafts. They're not just for card making or scrapbooking or mixed media. They're for me, they work for everything in the way that I craft. The second one is going to be my Stampin' Up. Now, I don't have many of these at all. Like I said, I get them on when they're on clearance. But I love them for the way that their crispness and the way that they fill in. I don't find that I have to re-ink them real often. But I love them for that. I love them for the way that they store. You don't have to worry about the lid coming off. It's just, I love Stampin' Up ink. And then, if I had to pick a third, it would be this Lawn Fawn. And this is something that I haven't been using for very long at all. But, you know, I'm really liking the Lawn Fawn. So, there's that. So, we're going to move this out of the way to where we can move on and talk about pigment inks. I have some American Craft pigment inks that are very old. I've had them for a long time. These are even older. This is Stampability's pigment ink. Don't get it confused with the dye-based. But I've had these for probably 15 years. And then here's some Opalite pigment ink, some Brilliance. This is all by a Japanese company, the same company that makes VersaFine, Versamark, Versamagic, Memento. It's the same company. It's a Japanese company, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce their name, even though I've said it before, because I am not butchering it. But that's the name of the company. I have some Ranger Adirondack pigment ink. There's another Versacolor that's in a multicolored one. And then we have Distress Oxides. And, yeah, I'll stop there for now. Which, again, like I said before, I think that the Distress ink and the dye-based is kind of in a field all of its own, and I sort of feel that way about the Distress Oxides, although they kind of act like a little bit of a hybrid in between a pigment and a dye-based ink. So some things that you need to know about pigment inks are, let me see if I can find my, they are slow drying, where these are fast drying. They have deep, rich colors. They're glycerin based, where these are water based. They're opaque, where, what I mean by that, here I go again with my finger. First off, they have softer pads to them, extremely soft, and you can't see through. That's like I stuck my finger in a paint can. See how opaque that is? And that's just one of the features for a pigment ink pad. And they will stamp on dark colored cardstock and be as rich. You'll still get that rich, deep color on blacks, on black cardstock and craft cardstock. And then where the dye-based ink absorbs into the paper, your pigment-based inks sits on top of the paper. They both are permanent inks, and they both dry. It's just going to take these a little bit longer to dry, which is a plus because they're great if you want to emboss. So that's a plus to them. Plus you can stamp with these on white or dark cardstock, and you're going to get color. Now, I did some examples, and I'll show you in just a second, but I want to tell you more about what I've learned about pigment, the pigment inks. You'll notice when you're stamping that they feel really sticky, and I found that you don't have to re-ink these as much. These right here, these three, I've had for 15 years. And I pulled them down to do some examples and realized that they've probably seen their last days, and they're pretty dried up. However, you can still use these that are almost dried up to your advantage by inking around the edge of a, inking around the edge of a paper or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll just try this. Yeah, see, something like that. I mean, actually, this one, look here. Look. That's still pretty juicy. Yeah, so I won't be throwing those away. But I do find that they last longer. You don't have to re-ink them as often. Then you have these little specialty ones here, and these are good for using a brayer on if you're wanting to. Let me get a brayer and show you all what that is. I should have had it out. And you'll have to forgive my brayer because I use it for mixed media, and I've had it for years. But a brayer, if you're wanting to make a background, that's what these are really good for. And this is the only one that I have to show you an example of. There are numerous ones out there. There's one where each individual foam pad is separated until you're ready to use it, and I don't remember who makes that, but then you just push it in and they go together, and you would just run your brayer over your ink pad, and you can use it that way. You can use it just on a stamp, you know, if you wanted a multicolored, like a flower or something, and like some of them, they'll be in ombre. So it's just, you know, it's just one of those little kind of a specialty ink pad that you can use in, you know, a little bit different ways. And yeah, I think that's it. These store face up, just like you're seeing them. They store face up because they're more, well, I guess they're more liquid, I guess you could say, kind of. And then, so let's show you the examples that have come up here. I use the American Crafts, I used the Stampabilities, I used this, and I used this. So let's put these guys back up here. Okay, these are the ones that I used on this. And I haven't been looking. I hope that been in frame. I don't want to do this again. Okay, so the first one here is the American Crafts. It's this American Crafts. I've had this forever, you guys. They probably don't even... I've had this since 2009. You all saw how juicy it still was. Okay, so there's how crisp that one is. I'm not even sure if they still make ink. That's a shame if they don't, but there that is. This is the Stampabilities. It is starting to dry up, and you can see that. But your color is more concentrated than it was with the dye-based inks. Here is the Tim Holtz Distress Oxide. I expect nothing different than the results that you see right there, because that's just the way it is. And then you can't see this one. It's probably going to look like a watermark, but it's that Opalite. It's the Opalite. I probably really shouldn't have put that in there because it's sort of confusing, and these are, like I said, they are drying up. But I'm going to try to show you what it looks like on black cardstock using them, even though these aren't the best examples because I didn't use smooth cardstock. This one right here is the Opalite, the one that you can't see at all on this paper. Here it is on dark paper. And then here is the Distress Oxide. See how you can still see that it's vibrant, and you know, you can still see it on black cardstock. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't do a lot of colored stamping using pigment inks on black cardstock. About the only thing that I would use, that I used it on, was I used the white on black cardstock for different things. And here's another one, the Moonlight White. So that's that. And then here's the Stampabilities, and it's in the red, the little car. And it's pretty much dried up, but I did want to show you that. And then here's what they look like. Those same colors look like on craft cardstock. This is what I was saying. You're still going to get that vibrant color. And overlook this right here, because that's me. That is not the ink. That's me. But here it is on white, and then here it is on craft. You can see that the color doesn't change a lot. And then here's the Tim Holtz on craft, and then on white. So there those are. And then over here, you really can't see hardly at all the Opalite, which I said that's confusing, probably confusing for you guys. And I probably shouldn't have put it in there, but I had it and thought, well, if I have it, I'll show it. So there, that is on the pigment inks. So I'm going to move this out of the way and put that in the floor for a second. Move these guys out of the way so y'all can see what's happening a little bit better. Okay, so we have chalk inks. This is Versamagic. It's by the same company, the Japanese company that starts with a T that I was telling you about. I picked all these up at Tuesday morning. I like them. They give you that chalk look. They are pigment based inks, but I found that they dry faster because they're drier for some reason. So they're kind of that's why I didn't lump those over here with the rest of the pigment inks, because they act a little bit differently. So those are all the colors that I have. So there's that. And then let's talk about hybrid inks. So I have, these are the only hybrid inks pads that I have, and they're the only ones that I've ever worked with. These are the ones that we had found at Tuesday morning, and I like them. They're a cross between, just like they say, they're a cross between a dye-based ink and a pigment-based ink. I've also found that you can use your alcohol markers with these once they're dried. You need to, after you stamp something, you need to heat set it, and then you can use your alcohol markers with them, and it did good. Was it the best? No, wasn't the best I've ever used, but they do work. So, and that's really, I don't know a whole lot more about hybrid inks than that, and I apologize. There are numerous companies out there that that have hybrid inks right now, and one that I'm really wanting to try because I've heard numerous times that, you know, it's a good overall ink pad for everything, and it's My Favorite Things. It's the hybrid ink by My Favorite Things. I've heard that it acts like a distress ink. It covers like a pigment ink. You can use alcohol markers with them, and it doesn't bother them. But that's hearsay, and I can't attest to it. So, you know, that's just what I've been hearing numerous times over and over. Speaking of alcohol, we're going to talk about StazOn. This is the only one I have. It's the only color I have, and it's the only one that I've found that I need for me. It's a solvent ink, and it's alcohol based. And what StazOn is good for, you'll notice that it has the little cover in here, and it does have a different smell to it. It doesn't bother me. It may bother some people who have extremely sensitive noses, but this is something that I've found that I've used over and over again, and it's extremely useful because excuse me, you can use this on metal, glass, ceramic, acetate, and it stays. You need to heat set it to where it'll dry quicker, but it's a, you know, if you're worried about that. I've even used it on fabric. Just make sure that you have something underneath, because it will go through, and there is no getting StazOn out. No, I mean, you might as well just hang it up. It's there. If it goes on, it's there for good. And then you have your Versamark. These are just embossing inks. You can use this as a watermark. When you open them up, it looks like there's nothing on there, but it's all clear. These are just clear embossing pads. These are the only two I own, and they are the only two that I've ever found that I really need. I just, you know, I just haven't found that I need it anymore for my crafting. So there there are those. And I felt like they needed to be in a little category of their own. And then I was going to talk to you about these Color Box mixed media inks. They, you know, I was reading on here on the bottom, and they haven't stated whether they're whether they're dye-based or pigment-based, but to me, they act like pigment-based inks. Honest opinion here, I'm not a fan of these because these lids will not stay on, and I have made more messes out of these inks than, these are the only two I have, thank goodness. But they're great for mixed media, and they're still good and juicy, so I don't want to throw them away. But maybe if I used them more, I would like them more, but I hate these lids. See, I mean, you can't take one apart. They're made to stack like that, but you can't take one apart without getting the other. But there's that on those. Now, you may be wondering about, and you know, no one's asked about alcohol markers, and the only ones I could tell you about are that I know the best are Spectrum Noir. But if you're wanting to know about what kind of ink to use with coloring using your Copics or your Spectrum Noir or whatever kind of alcohol markers you have, I use Memento. You can also use, well, where is it? Memento's good, and it cleans off of your stamp really well. Adirondack is good, and I've been told that Hero Arts, the Hero Hues, works really well. I haven't used that one, but I know this one right here, and this is the one that I use for that. So that's it for the inks that I have and the different categories. There may be another category, I can't think of one, but you know, if there is, and there's a seasoned crafter on here that has vast knowledge of even more inks, then please leave it in the comments below to where the new crafters can learn, you know, because if we don't help them, how else are they supposed to know anything? And that brings me to my next subject here about the inks and what I've learned, and I do have my notes over here to the side. If you're brand new and you have no idea what kind of ink to buy, I want you to think about something. Think about what type of crafting you're most interested in, such as card making, scrapbooking, or mixed media. And start off with that. If you say, okay, I think that I want to start making cards and only cards, I would suggest getting some dye-based inks. And then if you're wanting to do some embossing, get you some dye-based inks, and then pick up maybe an embossing, a clear embossing pad. Try it out and see how you like it. I don't suggest that you go out and you get all kinds of dye-based inks and all kinds of pigment-based inks. Because I would rather for you to try the dye-based inks first, because I think that they're a little bit easier for beginners to start out with than the pigment-based inks, because I'm afraid that you'll get really frustrated like I did, because I started out with these Stampabilities, and I got so mad. I'd worked so hard on a project, and you know, touch it, and because they stay wet longer, and I would ruin the project, and it was just really frustrating to me. So I think for that reason, try a dye-based ink and see how you like it, and then kind of go from there. But then think about what kind of style you're most drawn to. Are you drawn to more clean and simple, shabby chic, vintage? And then you can kind of base your ink purchases off of those decisions and from how I explained things to you previously in this video. So think about that. And then don't go. I do not, absolutely do not suggest that you go out and say you want to do a multitude of things and you decide that you want the distress ink because you're not you're not looking for clean and crisp and all. Don't go buy every one of Tim Holtz distress inks just right out of the gate. Don't do that. Pick one up and see how you like it. And then, you know, find some on sale, find some on clearance to try them out. See how you like them. You're never going to know. And every one is going to be different. I don't think that these companies have all of these different, you know, inks because everyone likes the exact same thing. I don't think that's true. Try them. Pick up one that's on sale or on clearance. Try it out. Get a basic color. See how you like it. Play around with it. If you're finding that you really like that, go for it. Just like what happened to me with these little 25-cent pads that I found at a garage sale. I love that. Love this even more with the new packaging and all. And then I love these. So, I mean, just find what you like. And then when you do find it, don't close your mind off to trying something different every now and then. Just like I had never tried a hybrid ink, but that didn't stop me from trying these when they were at Tuesday morning. I only have 3. Do I plan on getting any more of these? No, probably not. Because I'm not a fan of this shape. And that's one of the reasons. Not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of having to fill my pads myself like that. It isn't a lazy thing. It's just, I don't want that mess. But like I said before, I would like to try those, my favorite things, hybrid pads, and see, just test that out and see if that works, but for everything. But yeah, don't go ahead and don't just buy a whole collection without trying some first. And only buy the your basic colors when building up, you know, and just slowly build up your collection. This is a huge investment, and I understand that, but you know, it's kind of a tool. You know, you can think of it that way, as kind of a tool. But you don't have to have all of them to be a good crafter and make pretty things. So, I hope that helps. One other thing that Nancy had asked. Hi, Nancy. She had asked about the Catherine Poole inks. I do not have those. I've never used those. I've never worked with those. But I do know that they are a dye-based ink, just like the Distress inks and the Stampin' Up! Inks and the Lawn Fawn. And that's all that I can tell you about those, since I haven't worked with them, Nancy. But anyway, I think that's about all that I can think of to tell you about inks. I do hope that this was helpful to you. And there were several other questions that Nancy had asked. And I will be coming back on and trying to do these, you know, beginner crafting type things like this, because hopefully it will help. And I hope that I answered your question to your satisfaction, Nancy. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like this kind of video, please, please, please hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up, and if you have a question, leave it in the comments below, and I will do my best to get to it as soon as I possibly can. And I love helping you all as much as I possibly can too. Thanks. Talk to you later. Have a wonderful day. Bye.